This is an SM Media production. Hi folks, welcome to the latest episode of the SM Media Scottish Women's Football Show. I'm Scott McPike. It's a pleasure as always to be your host. I'm delighted as always to be joined by my guest co-host Suzanne Mulvey.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Pleasure, looking forward to this, and it's a pleasure to welcome on, as I guess she's been on before, but it was so good we've asked her on again. It's a pleasure to welcome from Falkirk, Helen Templeton.
Hiya, thanks for having me again. Good to be back.
Brilliant, different club this time.
Is a different club this time, yeah. It's funny, I was playing fives the other day there, and I'd seen a lassie I'd not seen in a while, and the first thing she said to me was, Dibsy, who are you playing for? And I went, she's like, you still at Stenhousemuir? I was like, no, I moved away to Falkirk now. And she's like, you've had more clubs than Tiger Woods. And it's not the first time I've heard that, but another club.
We'll get into Falkirk because I want to obviously touch on the competitiveness of that league. But Suzanne, we've had a busy weekend of action in the SWPL. It was the final weekend before the winter break. What were your main takeaways of the action?
First of all, Celtic dropping points, obviously massive for Hearts. They're kind of shown that they're a team that's pushing, to break that kind of break the top three. So obviously Celtic dropping the points, great for Hearts, but obviously Celtic, they were already behind Rangers, so a bit disappointing weekend for them. Spartans getting a point, I think that's big for them. Montrose are looking well against the teams around them. They always kind of do well, but so far for Spartans, I think it was right at the end of the game they've managed to get an equaliser, so huge for them. I suppose, City, you expect them to win. A good result for Motherwell. They're always hit or miss. So it's a good result for them. But that's about, I think the biggest shock was probably Celtic dropping the points overall.
Helen, I spoke to Lisa McFarlane last week and she said something interesting about the Hearts Celtic game. She said that the way the mentality is at Hearts now is that they know that the top three are so far ahead, but they do not fear going up against them home or away. I find that interesting, and it shows. I kind of watched the game back, and I looked at that. Hearts really went toe to toe with Celtic, and a very deserving point, I thought.
Yeah, to be fair, I actually turned over after obviously the glory of Rangers winning the cup yesterday. I turned over and sorry, I had to get that in there. I turned over and looked at the score, and Hearts were up 1-0. And to be fair, as Suzanne's just said, that was my kind of shock reaction when I saw that. It was like they're fairly taking it toe to toe, but Eva's obviously in there with a bit of intent. They started to turn things around, I think, probably 1 or 2 seasons ago, and they started to make their moves. And if you're going to pick a team in that league that's kind of turning heads, you would say it's Hearts. But it was a bit of class from Caitlin Hayes with that wee touch in the box. It was slick and a really good finish. But up to that point, I thought that Hearts looked like, well, I'd hope that they would have maybe held on for the rest of the game. But at 56 minutes is still a long time to get played. But they're going to be the ones that come away from that feeling a little bit disheartened for being 1-0 up and then obviously finishing with a point.
Suzanne, that obviously means Rangers are further ahead in the race. They won 4-0 at home to Hamilton. Mia McCauley with a double. That'll just be a huge boost for their momentum, won't it, to be unbeaten getting into the winter break and further ahead in the table?
Yeah, definitely. I probably want to change my predictions for, we've done the start of the season. I obviously say Celtic, and I always say it every year, the core players that they keep, if you can build on that, keep the likes of Kelly Clark, Caitlin Hayes, Natalie Ross, Chloe Craig, and build on it, bring in players. But they've always had the problem with strikers. They've had Charlie Wellens, they've always had players that have came in and went. Whereas Rangers this season, their front, 3-4 players. And then the fact that Jane Ross, give her a mention as well, came back from injury, got a goal as well. Absolutely delighted for her. What a professional she is. She's just a phenomenal player and a lovely girl as well. So delighted for her to come back. But they're just looking phenomenal. Kirsty Howitt, give her a mention. I don't know why she's not in that Scotland squad regularly, banging in the goals. And even if it's just to get her in there and give her more experience around it, giving her some minutes, bringing her as a sub. But the fact, obviously, she got the 23s call up, which was good for her. But I think she should be in that A squad because she's a player that, although she's maybe it's 26 or something, she's a player who definitely should be in and around there and getting a bit of experience for the future.
Helen, I want to touch on Rangers with you. Obviously, they've played 16 games, they've won 15, drew 1. They've been so relentless. They've got real hard there. I think it's been magnificent. But I spoke to Suzanne about this in the past. Joe Potter's come in there, and I was really impressed with her in the AGM, just the way she came across, what she was saying, how she wanted to envision the next couple of years. And Rangers have got a really impressive coach, but as Suzanne said, they've got a lot of attacking talent. What's really clicked with Rangers this season, do you think?
I mean, obviously, Joe coming in is a real coup for them. I remember, obviously, growing up back in the day, and Joe was one of the ones down in the English team that, was one of the big guns. And she obviously comes with a wealth of experience on the pitch, and the knowledge I think she's brought up as well is going to be like a coup for that squad. The squad they've got is just full of talent, and it's young talent. I remember not long ago, probably 2-3 years back now, playing against Rangers when I was at Boroughmuir in the Cup. And the young players coming through is just incredible. And I think that you're starting to see them now coming through, and especially in the forward lines, they're frightening. It's absolutely frightening. So I think that their youth is kind of probably, well, not to take anything away from the older players in the squad either, but their youth coming through is frightening. That's huge for them.
Suzanne, SWPL 2, Queen's Park are now 12 points clear. Kilmarnock were held at Gartcairn, but Queen's Park won 1-0 away to Livingston. They look good, don't they, Queen's Park?
Yeah, you can't see anybody else taking that title but Queen's Park. They look solid. They don't look like they're going to lose many points over the course of the season. Another good result away. Obviously, Livingston are one of the teams that are kind of pushing for the title. So to get that one away was brilliant for them. And like I say, Craig's done brilliant, went in there. And he knows that league. He knows that league very well, and he's done well. And the group of players that he's got in there. And a top goal scorer as well, just miles ahead. In SWPL 1, you've got Rio Hardy, Kirsty Howitt, there's quite a few players around there, Amy Gallagher, whereas there it's Ellie Kane, right? Like nobody's catching up with her goal scoring. And that makes a massive difference. If you've got a goal scorer, week in, going to get you a lot of goals, then, basically that can win you the title.
Suzanne, we spoke about it last week briefly, but I want to get your thoughts on Scotland's Nation League campaign. What was your main takeaways for the two games over Belgium and England?
Overall, disappointing. The full campaign disappointing. For me, like the biggest disappointment overall is when I looked at the starting 11 against England, there was only 3 players that play their football in Scotland. 3 starting players that play in Scotland, and for me, that's disappointing because you've got Rangers investing so much money, Celtic investing so much money. Glasgow City, a lot of their players are full time, and to all these squads to only have 3 players starting. It obviously shows, the league down. I think there was maybe 12 players in the squad that play down in England, and obviously that league's huge down there. But for me, the fact that there's so much money getting invested in Scotland and we're trying to progress for only 3 players to start, in the Scotland national team, for me, that probably is the most disappointing thing. But as I say, there's loads of reasons. A lot of them play down south, some of them play abroad in other countries. But for me, is that because there's too many foreigners coming in? Is it just because the competitiveness down in England is much, much better, and the players, when they're in the training camp, they can't compete with them. They're just not ready for the starting 11. I don't know what it is, but for me, that was the biggest takeaway. Obviously, the results, the fact that they've never qualified, a bit of controversy with the Team GB thrown in there as well. But the fact that there's so few players starting that play their football based in Scotland, for me, that probably is the most disappointing thing. I think that's probably the lowest that I've seen it in a very long time.
Helen, how do you fix that? Because there's a lot of players in that Scotland team who I think it's clear are kind of coming to the end of their time at national level. But you do have some exciting talent coming through, but it's a weird mix because are the talent coming through ready to take that step? It's a difficult one to assess, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be disappointed with that campaign, obviously. And the controversy over the whole Team GB thing as well, that was an interesting one. I saw that Rachel Corsie was getting it tight in the press, and that would have been a difficult one to deal with. But in terms of the young talent coming through, I mean, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because they're going to have to do something. And by reading obviously after that game, players are getting a little bit of negative press at the moment, so the gaffer in there is going to have to do something to shake it up, because I think, the more Scotland play, the more the women's game grows. It's going to be a little bit more scrutiny on, on how they perform in these kind of qualifiers.
Let's move into talking a bit about your new club, Helen Falkirk. Obviously, joining there from Stenhousemuir, still in SWF League One. It's a very tight league. There's a lot of games to be played. We mentioned it before for Farmington, the start they've made. But what's kind of impressed you about getting in at Falkirk and obviously reuniting with Suzanne and things like that? Like, what's really impressed you so far?
See, to be fair, like obviously, I hadn't really planned on leaving Stenhousemuir at the time, and it was a bit of a kind of I had to make a decision about, whether I wanted to play football or whether I wanted to stay at Stenhousemuir and sit on a bench and see what was happening. So for me, the opportunity at Falkirk, I wouldn't even really have realised was an option. But when I made the decision to leave Stenhousemuir, obviously Falkirk got in touch, and as soon as I went in, it was kind of sold to me. Like Falkirk obviously narrowly missed out on promotion last season. I know I'm getting older, but the competitive side of me is still there. I still want to win leagues. I still want to try and get promotion. And you can play for clubs your whole career and not win trophies and not get promotion. So it's still like part of what I want to do. As soon as I went in, the gaffer was really impressive about the setup. The girls, the mentality is just like win. And that for me is really important. I think it's probably fair to say, the girls are very professional throughout training sessions, match days, everything that goes with that. I think it's obviously we're not in the best of place in terms of in that league at the moment. I think we're underperforming. If you look at our last 4 or 5 results, they've not been great. But sometimes football just doesn't click, and I can't put a finger on it. Having been there for 8 or 9 weeks now, I don't know what's not clicking. But I think as a squad, I wouldn't be letting anyone into any secrets by saying that we've got some work to do when the new season starts after Christmas break.
And was it a tough decision to kind of go to another team in that league, and you've seen the competitive nature of it? Like, was that a tough kind of point of kind of leaving a team like Stenhousemuir? And obviously, when I spoke to you last year, Stenhousemuir were aiming for promotion. It didn't obviously work out, but it's difficult to go to another team in the league at a kind of similar level and really kind of make that step. Do you kind of think that when you joined?
So basically, my choice was either drop a level and go and try and play every week, or stay in the same league. And part of the reason I wanted to stay in this league was that I just love how tight it is. It's so close. It's so competitive. Some of the best football in my career has not been in the top flight. It's been in these competitive leagues where everything's so tight. And you can see in the last 3 or 4 weeks, even the results that have come in with the games that have been missed and they're just getting caught up. Everybody's taking points off everybody. So although I would like Falkirk to have maybe picked up a few extra points in the last few weeks than what we have, it's still really tight, and the top 6 or 7 places could go either way. So for me, when I left Stenhousemuir, like I said, I was happy there. The only, obviously last season managed to finish top goal scorer, signed on for the new season, played all of pre-season, and then when the league started, I was on the bench, and then obviously a couple of games in, we had the cup game against St Mirren. I came off the bench and scored a hat-trick, and that was me thinking, I've cemented my place in that team. And then the next again week rolls around and it was Falkirk in the derby, and I was thinking, brilliant, you can't do much more coming off a bench and scoring a hat-trick. And then obviously I was benched for that. So I think at that point I made the decision, I want to go and try and play my football and play as many minutes as I can. And to be fair to Falkirk, they've given me maximum minutes every week, and I'm really grateful to them for that. So it wasn't, I've never really gone from one derby team to the other. So there was a little bit of word from the old teammates saying, oh, you can't go to Falkirk, you can't go there, we hate Falkirk. They didn't really say that, but it was a bit of rivalry. But it was never in question, because I'm looking around the teams going, who's in this league that has got an equal shot at promotion, and Falkirk are up there. So it was an easy decision to make as soon as I knew the offer was on the table.
Suzanne, see when you kind of reach a stage and you're wanting to play football when they kind of opportunities become limited, how important is it to make that kind of jump to go to another club and things like that? Because I always think, like, hearing a lot of players talk about it, like it's a gamble, but it very often it pays off kind of more often than not.
I mean, as you get to the kind of end of your career, you want to play as much as possible, because you don't have long left. When you're younger, you're still learning a lot, you're still developing, you're learning for the players around you. So when you're on the bench, at least right, you're still going to get opportunities, you're learning for players around you. But as you get older, you think, well, I've experienced a lot, and it's not taken away from the fact that you can still learn from the players around you. You know, even, you know, I'm 39 now. If I was to go back and play, I know that I could still learn from players around me. But it is just that, you know, that there's no, the clock's ticking, you don't have long left. So you want to play as many minutes as possible, or at least get opportunities where you can show what you can do. And, you know, like you know, Helen's saying, coming off the bench, scoring a hat-trick, you know, what more can you ask for? And then to still not get that opportunity to play in a derby is disappointing. And that's probably what happened with me at Partick Thistle. You know, I've went in and then COVID happened, and it's just commitments you've got, you know, whether it's your career, whether it's your family, your kids. You know, you give up. You're not giving up more because younger players are giving up the same, or, you know, just as much. But it's the fact that you do give up a lot, and you have already gave up so much of your life to football that you just think it's not, you know, it's not worth it. If you're still giving up all that to sit on the bench or to not get at least a fair chance, then it's not worth it. So you need to be happy. You need to, you know, still be playing. You need to be kicking that ball. That's why you're still playing, because you enjoy it. So it's just your priorities are different, and obviously you're in a different place in your life where you know that you're not going to get lots more seasons where you can make changes, you can, you know, still get a lot of opportunities. So it's just the fact that you know you've got to make the most of what you've got left, and I think that's, you know, obviously what Helen's doing. You know, you've jumped to a team where you still could get promotion, you're playing regularly, so for you that's more important than, you know, sitting on the bench. Or at least, you know, you're getting an opportunity and you're showing what you can still do. And, you know, no matter what league it is, I've played SWPL 1, SWPL 2, and it's just, no matter what league you're in, it is competitive. You know, no matter, you've played at the highest level, you've played with Rangers, Helen, so you know what it's like to be a winner. And even, you know, no matter if you drop down leagues, you still want to win. You know, and you've got so much experience that you want to pass that on to players. You know, as you get older, that's one of the, like, for me, the most enjoyable things when you start getting older, passing on things, helping players around you. You know, if they put in a ball that, you know, should be to the back post, but they put it down low, just, you know, a wee quiet word in the ear. You get so many players that get frustrated at that, but it's like, no, teach them. You know, you've got so much out of the game. You need to show the younger players around you, you know, that there's experienced players that they want to listen to. You know, if you're shouting at younger players, then they're thinking, well, I don't like this, I'm not enjoying this. Whereas if you're giving them a quiet word, a wee tip here and there, then, you know, they enjoy it. I learned so much for, you know, players like Pauline Hamill, Debbie McWhinney, Julie Fleeton, of course, you know, and to be around players like that and to learn as much as I did, I just wanted to pass it on. And I'm sure Helen to say you're a PE teacher as well, so you've got that in you, you know, to help young players develop to the best of their ability. So for me, it is just taking as many opportunities as you can, because I mean, your career could be over tomorrow, you know, so it's just make the most of what you've got now.
Yeah, I do. I feel like there's a bit of a natural progression as you get older, that you do, like you said, Suzanne, you need to make choices about, you know, where to play and how much game time you're going to get, and, you know, you do prioritise a little bit differently. You know, when I moved to St Johnstone a couple of seasons ago, I loved it there, and then broke a rib within the first 5 weeks, and that was it. You couldn't get back in, so I'm not going to sit there for another 3 years, you know, watching the game go by when you're counting the minutes as it is. And I think as you get older, you kind of have the intensity of feeling that the time is slipping away just gets more and more and more. So yeah, if you're not happy, then I would honestly advocate anybody to make the decision to go and move on, because you need to love what you do, and you need to be able to do what you do to love it. So
yeah, there's been a good kind of team spirit you've had in there. Like, obviously, like Suzanne Wyatt's there. There's a lot of, like, Kirsty Gilbert's been always really caught my eye anytime I've kind of seen her. But there is a lot of good players in that Falkirk team. But there's a lot of players with a lot of experience as well. So there must be a good camaraderie in there.
Oh yeah, there's definitely camaraderie sometimes to the extreme. Susie's just like full of it. Eh? I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised to hear that. But now there's a really good group, and there's a few new players coming in, or obviously came in. There's a couple of players that came in when I started, and there's a wee bit of movement. So the group's kind of, the dynamics changing and shifting a wee bit. But it's really good, and I think that's what carries a team, isn't it? You know, on and off the park. I do think there's a wee bit of frustration at the moment within the squad. Again, I don't think it's bad to admit that. I think, you know, you've got a lot of competitive heads in there, a lot of players that, as you said, have got a lot of experience, and young players that are going to go up the way. Not including myself and Suzanne in that, but yeah, they want to climb the ladder, and when the standards aren't good enough, like, we all feel it. And I think that sometimes can be the frustration that kind of ekes into the squad, but that's football, isn't it? I mean, that happens all the time. So, like I said, we just need to find a way to keep that togetherness, and you know, the names on the paper are well enough to win that league, but you know, you've got to catch teams like Forfar and Edinburgh Cali, and you know, the more points you let slip away, the harder that's going to be. But we've still got that in our sights. It's not changed.
Suzanne, what's your kind of highlights really as we're talking about there, like camaraderie and kind of changing rooms and things like that? And is there anything kind of jumps out to you when I ask you that?
It's just, you know, from every place, every team that I've played in, you know, a couple of different countries or whatever, it's just, you meet so many amazing people. And, you know, I done an interview with Rachel Corsie a while ago, and I'd say to her, what would you, like, what's the best kind of highlight, or what would you take? And she says that she got a bit of advice, like, no matter where you are, every single person that comes into your life, like, take something from them, because they'll have something to offer, and just try and learn as much as you can from as many people as you can. And I think that's for me. I've played alongside so many fantastic players, Julie Fleeton, Shelley Kerr, Rhonda Jones, you know, like the list is absolutely endless. And it's just, you meet so many amazing characters. Stacey Cook was absolutely mental. Like, she, in the best possible way, such a lovely, lovely girl, but just crazy. And I mean, I couldn't even tell you some of the stories on here, like get ripped off YouTube. But just people like that, and then the likes of Julie Fleeton would feed off that. You know, she'd be like, Stacey, do this, do that, and Nikki Grant as well. And just so many different characters, and it's just fantastic to get to share, you know, moments on and off the park with just so many fantastic players and people as well. You know, there's some great people that I've met, and as I say, you know, like, I played over in Iceland for a bit as well, and some of the characters over there were absolutely fantastic as well. And as well, learning, you know, there was a player that I played along. I actually went over there because she was injured. It was a striker, Olga. Like, she was a top goal scorer in the whole of Iceland, and she got injured. She done her ACL, and I went over to kind of just fill in for her for a few months. And then when she came back and we played alongside each other, like, what a player! Just nothing that I'd ever played alongside. Like, Julie Fleeton's absolutely phenomenal. You know what I learned for her. Pauline Hamill, but you know, Olga was just that different kind of culture, like Icelandic player. I learned so much for her. And it's just, there's so many different characters, you know, and no matter, I think, like Helen will know this, no matter what team you go to, there is always one or two jokers. Like, there's just always a couple of players that, in the best possible way, just, you know, you go and you get that bit of banter, and they just kind of make it enjoyable. And whether it's, you know, training session, sometimes they take it a bit too far, and you've got to kind of rein them in a bit and be like, right, come on, like, let's get back to training, like, let's, you know, take it serious. But it's just like, they're just characters everywhere you go, and it's what, like, when you look back, that's kind of the best memories. You know, you think, oh, they done this, they done that, and you know, like, I'll tell you a wee stupid story. Like, I was playing years ago. It was one of my first Champions League campaigns with Hibs, and we were in Belgium. I was probably about like 18 or something, and Stacey Cook, you know, was there, and we had played the game, and we went outside, and there was this big, massive, like, tricycle, you know, like a big three-wheeler Harley Davidson motorbike outside. And Stacey Cook's jumped right on it. You know, we don't know whose it is. Like, there's about 4 or 5 bikes, so she's jumped right on the front of it. And then Pauline Hamill's jumped on the back, and they're like, take a photo, take a photo. And it was before you even had smartphones, so everybody's like got their camcorders and their proper like Polaroid cameras out. So they're on it, and then next minute this guy comes out of the clubhouse, and he's like this big, massive guy, leather jacket, big beard, like, just looked so rough. This is in Belgium. And then Stacey, like, jumps off, and Pauline's trying to get off. Hammy's trying to get off the back, can't get off the back, and he's like, you want a ride? And she's like, aye, why not? So he jumps on the front, starts driving away like 5 miles an hour, and then she goes, oh, Stacey, watch my bag. And he goes, don't worry, you won't need that anymore. And he just shoots off, and we're like, oh my God, like, we've just let her get taken away by this guy in the bike. And obviously he just went round the block and came back. But just wee things like that you always remember. There's so many of them, but there's just so many characters, and as I said, I've got a big smile on my face thinking back, like, just so many great stories and so many great people that I've met.
You know, it's so funny. I just want to add that it's so funny that you said that, because the names that jump out are exactly the same names that you mentioned, Suzanne. Like, obviously being at Motherwell with Stacey, Mandy, Tracy. Like, honestly, it's so funny. Like, you can't probably repeat half the stories, but Nikki Grant from years ago back in Hamilton, like, all these names are the same ones that just obviously filter through different people as the standouts.
And Suzanne Winters as well. Suzanne
Grant.
Together, they were absolute nuts. It was brilliant.
Yeah, honestly, I'll still say this to the day I die. That Motherwell team that All those, like, I call them the old legends. Every one of them that was in that team was just absolute banter, and you can imagine how competitive folk in that team were. But honestly, like, I totally agree with Suzanne. Like, football is one of the greatest memories, and it's brilliant. It does, not only does it take you across the country, and for you, Suzanne, obviously across the world as well, but it gives you memories for a lifetime. And for me, like, it was one of the best decisions I ever took to get into the game. Honestly, there's so many things you look back on, and you'll just laugh. Like you said, big smile on your face.
Before we wrap up, I'm going to add Suzanne in this as well. We're going to do a teammates round our current players, but I'm going to do it with players who have played in kind of present and past. I've probably asked you both this before, but Suzanne, who would you say would be the best player you've played against?
Showing my age, there was a player when I played against England years ago, so I was, like 18, 19, and I remember playing against England a few times. We were unlucky one time, they just beat us like kind of last minute 1-0. But there was a player that I don't even know if you'll remember or not, but she played with Arsenal and England, Mary Phillip. I think she was right back, maybe, or centre half. I can't even remember. But she just had absolutely everything. Like, I remember her being so fast, so strong, such a great passer of the ball. And I just remember, like, anytime I went near her, I like that way. Like, I've always been a confident player and known that, I had skill and I could beat players, but like, just knowing coming up against her, I was like, this is going to be like tough. And I probably played against her 2 or 3 times, so she was really tough. But even, a couple of other players, like, kind of in Scotland in the league, like Rachel Corsie was always a tough player. And one player that I think deserves a mention is Jenny Bay. Like, I always feel like she's a player that, like, just always looked like she was in second gear, like never really needed to try. And I've played alongside her, kind of early on at Celtic before she went down to Arsenal for the first time. And she just, everything was so casual and calm. And she was such a, for being such a big, tall player, she was fast as well. She had a kind of ton of pace, but she just, it was like always just like I said, but not like she never really needed to try. So for her, it's disappointing to see her on the bench so much for Arsenal. Like, coming to the end of her career, we spoke about, should you move on or whatever, and people have different priorities. But for me, when they're getting beat, their last game, and then you're seeing she's on the bench, and you think even set pieces at the end, she should be kind of up there, like she's always a threat. So it's disappointing to see that. I'd like to see her play more. But I definitely, Mary Phillip, she was just a different kettle of fish, phenomenal.
Helen, who comes to mind when I ask you that, the best player you played against?
So I think when I played with Scottish Unis a few years ago, Annie Luco was in one of the English, obviously the English team, I think. So she was obviously class. I'm sure it was her. And then in Scotland, I'd probably say like Caroline Weir, because she's just phenomenal. That was back, I think I must have been at Hamilton Accies at the time, and we probably took like a 9-0 doing off Hibs. I think it was in Broxburn, if I remember rightly. But aye, she's phenomenal, and you can't argue with that. So I think those two are for me.
It's so weird, like you saying that, because obviously I'm talking about a defender, obviously being a striker, and you're talking about attacking players, and I'm just thinking, thank God I never had to come up against like some of the players.
Aye, they're frightening, totally frightening.
Suzanne, is there a particular stadium that comes to mind when you say like you played there? Like, obviously, you've both played in some magnificent stadiums in your careers, but anything kind of jump out, like in terms of the atmosphere, just the overall like aura of the place? Anything jump out at you?
Two in particular. I remember we went over for Scotland and played against Germany, and like, it's bad. I can't even. It's more just about the atmosphere. I can't even remember the name of the stadium, because it wasn't a massive stadium. There was 15,000 crowd there, but it was more like just kind of like an oval stand. It wasn't like a proper stadium, but the atmosphere was brilliant. And at the end as well, like, they were kind of cheering. We got to be like 5-0 or something, because Germany were world champions at the time. But like they were giving us cheers, and they were just such a great crowd. So that, but probably one of my all-time favourites is when I'd been out of the game for like about 3 years. I had a back injury, and then I joined Glasgow City, and Eddie says to me, go and play with the reserves for the rest of the season, do well, and then you'll get straight back into the first team. And that's what happened for me, straight in. So that it was the January when the season started. So I just started back at pre-season, and then I got a phone call from him saying, Anna wants you in the Scotland squad. And I says, look, I've already spoke to Anna. I don't want to go back in because I'm not 100% yet. And I want to, when I go back in, I want to kind of give a fair representation and know that I can actually contribute. So he said, fine, no bother. And then he phoned me back half an hour later and went, somebody's pulled out of the squad to go to America at the start of February. Do you want to go? And I was like, well, I changed my mind. I want back in. So I ended up getting to go over to America. And I think that's when the US national team were world champions. So got to play, so that's 2013, got to play in Jacksonville and Nashville. And the stadium was the Jacksonville Jaguars stadium, like American football. But that was just, I think it was like 13 or 14,000 crowd, and that was absolutely phenomenal. And as well, like my family came over to watch as well, so it was brilliant. Like it was only Lyndon at the time, you know, Elaine and Lyndon, he was the only one that had the other two at that point, but he came over, and like one of my favourite all-time pictures is after the game, I've got the Scotland strip on and I'm holding Lyndon. He's like 4 or 5 at the time, and he's got a Scotland strip on as well. And it's things like that, like when you look back, you know, it's memories, you want to, things like that. But that for me, it was just such a great crowd. Knew it was like televised live in America, and I know quite a lot of coaches and players over there, so to kind of, for them to message afterwards and say, oh, we've seen you, you know, like live on TV, blah, blah, blah. So for me, that is just, it's not so much the stadium, it's more just, you know, the fact that you're kind of, obviously, you know, the atmosphere and the memory of it. But probably, you know, probably the most kind of famous or best stadium that I've probably played at is Celtic Park. I've not got the opportunity to play at Ibrox or Hampden or anything like that. So when I was at Celtic, to play at Celtic Park and to score as well against Rangers, I don't know if Helen was in the team at the time, I can't remember. But that was, again, you know, it's just the family was watching and getting to score at Parkhead, being such an iconic stadium. That was quite special as well.
Can you remember who scored Scotland scored 1 goal in each game? Can you remember who scored them?
Well, I guess in America.
Yeah, it was the same player who scored both.
Was it the same player?
Mm-hmm.
I know it was Suzanne Winters. She scored a cracking volley in the second game. I didn't know she had scored the other game as well.
Yeah, she scored another game as well.
I know, I remember it was a cracking goal. Because I think me and her, like, kind of, I was just back in the squad, and me and her were kind of always on the bench. And she came on, I remember, scored an absolutely amazing goal. And I can't remember if it was that game or the other game, but she got her 100th cap. And on the same day, Abby Wambach got her 200th cap. And after the game, they got to swap shirts and everything, which was quite cool.
Yeah, that's my memory of it as well. Yeah, I remember that picture.
Great memory for her.
Helen, what about your best stadium you played in?
You can't ask me off the back asking Suzanne that. She's been played for Scotland, been on these incredible stadiums all around the world. I'm going to say something like Starks Park in a Fife derby or something.
Wait, that's impressive. Like, that's
no. I mean, see, to be fair, like I feel a wee bit frustrated at women's football that kind of I grew up through the time where it was becoming big, but it took 15, 20 years to get there. And you know, when we were playing, even when I played SWPL for, I don't know, must have been 10, 12 years, maybe more than that, the crowd sizes were still very minimal in comparison to what they are now. So I think actually, I don't know if Suzanne played in this game, but I remember playing for, do you remember they first started the Friday night football, and it was a big push to try and get the women's games on the Friday night, and they were doing lots of podcasts and lots of, like, some of them were being televised, but no really at that point. And I remember Celtic played, was at Hamilton Accies at the time, and we had Celtic there, and it was a massive thing, and we had all the wee ball girls, and like we had a massive crowd. When I say massive crowd at that time, it was probably a few hundred. But I remember, obviously, you know, walking out in the stadium with all the fans and like the little ball girls, and that's the kind of, like, that's the dream, isn't it? That's what you want when you're a little kid, and that's, you know, that's what we all want. When we start playing this game, that's what you want to do. You want to be in the big moments, and although in the grand scheme of things, especially in comparison to Suzanne, it wasn't a big moment, but for me it was, you know, it's those memories where you're playing against top teams like Celtic in stadiums, like what you'd class as professional men's stadiums, and you know, the crowd and the ball girls, and you know, the interviews and all the media stuff that goes on, and that for me is like, you know, I lived for that stuff. And as you start to go down the leagues, there isn't so much of that. You're lucky if you get a photographer. Photographer at Falkirk's incredible, by the way, but you're lucky if you get anything like that when you kind of drop. So yeah, I do miss that stuff, but the memories, like those are the memories I'll look back on.
Yeah, and it's those that you kind of remember, like, especially like kind of looking back, like he's obviously came through different kind of journeys, but he's played at a really high level, and the kind of way the women's game's progressing as well. Is there a kind of part of you, Suzanne, who kind of wishes like that coverage had been there back in the day, or was it never really on? Like, have you kind of thought about that recently? We spoke a lot about in terms of how the game's been promoted and things like that, but I've always looked at it as there's been so much time wasted with that. Why is it only taken till now? Like I just wonder what it would have been like 20 years ago when there was this a kind of really good level of player coming through as well. It'd have been so much different. We'd have probably been taught about it a lot more than what we are, and that's kind of why I think like things like this are important, because we can look back in times where the coverage wasn't the same, but we can still, the memories are still there. Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the important thing.
Yeah, like see some of the, like, I'm not a big-headed player at all, you know that, like I hate bumming myself up, but see some of the goals that would have been televised, like things like that, you know, like it's just, I've got so many amazing memories, and even looking back, like goals for Scotland that like I can't look back and, you know, show like my kids, you know, it's things like my youngest is 4 on January the 1st, and for him, like he's never seen me play, and I can't even, you know, I can go and maybe show him a couple of clips on YouTube, but I can't even show him like Scotland goals, and you know, it's obviously that's personally, you know, for me, but it's just so different now. The era's so different, and you hate to say it, and it's not, you know, kind of try to bring players down, but a lot of players don't understand how easy they've got it now, and you know, like, and it is all the players, not just, you know, myself and my era, players before, the amount of effort and the amount of dedication and time that they gave up to get the game to where it is now. You know, like I think that's at times forgotten, because, you know, like Julie Fleeting, stupid things like Julie Fleeting had a phenomenal career, and, you know, she was over playing in America, but even things like she was a full-time PE teacher, and then she would literally just fly down to Arsenal on like a Saturday night and play a game and fly back up. And, you know, like one of the most amazing things that, you know, or memories probably for Julie as well, was she played against Scotland, played for Scotland against Germany on a Saturday. I think she maybe scored, but we got beat, and then a full 90 minutes she played, and then she flew down straight after the game, flew down to London and played in the FA Cup final for Arsenal and scored a hat-trick. And it was like one of, you know, I think it was like, was it like a bank holiday or something? They started televising the games during the day so that everybody could see it. And I remember watching it afterwards, just thinking, like, she's just played 90 minutes against Germany, world champions, and then flew down to London, a team that she doesn't even train with because she's a full-time PE teacher. And it's things like that, like she got great opportunities and played with a fantastic team. But at the same time, what she had to do, like I think she was training with, like, I don't know if it was like Cowan Juniors, like men's team or something like that, just so that she could keep herself ticking over to then go and, you know, travel down. And then even like Kirsty McBride, she started doing it as well, like she was flying down, and like Suzanne Winter's done it for a bit as well, and, you know, like things like that, just to get the opportunities to go and play at a higher level, or just a different opportunity, what they kind of done and you know, had to do and had to give up. But then you know, you've got other things like some of the most fantastic players I've ever played, like Debbie McWhinney, what a player, fantastic talent, but she loved her career and never wanted to play professional. She got offered to go down to Arsenal and said no. You know, like she could have been a professional footballer, but she was like, I don't want to leave my family, I don't want to leave my job, because I don't know how long I'm going to be able to get a contract. And, you know, it was a 1-year deal at the time, and things like that. So there's so many players that I feel could have been absolutely world class, like phenomenal. You know, Donna James, Stacey Cook as well. Like Stacey Cook in this day and age, like if she got the opportunities that some of these players got, like what I don't think I've seen anybody that can pass a ball like as good as Stacey Cook. Just absolutely phenomenal. So it's things like that, like the players. You know, there's some fantastic players and great work ethic now, and amazing talent, young players coming through. But at the same time, they've got it like so easy that I just hope that they understand what they've got right now and take the most of it, like the opportunity. You know, you've got young players like Emma Watson, who amazing opportunity, go down to Man United, and then unfortunately does an ACL, but what a talent she is, and what a great, fantastic young kind of mentality for somebody so young. She's got a great work ethic, and I know she'll come back stronger and absolutely do fantastic in the league down there. But there's a lot of players where you just think, and not naming any names, but on the pitch you just see it, just like they're going through emotions, like they've got this opportunity where, like for me, it was always when I go on the pitch, like I give 100%, and like I don't want ever anybody, a teammate especially, you don't want like your teammates down, you don't want them to see, you know, working hard. So the most important thing is you work so hard, you know, you put in the effort, and then everything will come afterwards. But sometimes you see players like just walking back or getting frustrated, you know, throwing their hands up in the air, and it's like, you have got this opportunity that there's so many, like hundreds of players before have never had the opportunities that you've got. So, you know, like for me, it's just, it's amazing what you've got now, but as well, like what I was saying earlier, like for only 3 players to be starting that are based in Scotland for the Scotland national team as well, for me, that's kind of a bit worrying. For me, that's, you know, if I'm a player that's based in Scotland that's playing professional, I'm like, nah, I'm pushing. I want to get in that Scotland squad because, you know, like I'm full time, I'm professional. I should be at the very, very peak, the best that I can ever get. So for me, it is just fantastic. The game's growing. You know, that there's been so much progression. Going back, like to kind of when I started playing, the pitches like cow fields that you used to play on, like, were absolutely horrendous. I remember one time I playing against Kilmarnock. I can't even remember the name of the pitch. It was in Kilmarnock, and it was that heavy. The game went to extra time, and the pitch was that heavy that I remember I was like running through on goal right at the end, and afterwards Pauline Hamill was like, "You look like you were running in reverse." Like the pitch was just so heavy, and it's things like that. And now you've got like teams regularly playing Hampden, Celtic Park, Ibrox, and even, you know, like say, you know, Excelsior Stadium, like we, you know, different things like that. Like it's still a stadium, you're still getting a crowd, and for me as well, like one of the amazing things that you're actually getting fans now that like look up to the players, and they go like, one player to mention, like Caitlin Hayes, you know, like the pink band, you see all the wee girls with the pink bands like every week, and it's like her wee fan club. And for me, that's fantastic to see, because that's what you want, like, it's role models. And you know, that like them coming to every game and then encouraging their friends to come along, like for me, that's so important, because it might be slightly controversial, but I think one of the biggest problems is we need more women supporting women. Like, you know, like you say, like Ibrox, Celtic Park, there's, you know, 50, 60,000 fans. Why are they not supporting the you know, Rangers women, Celtic women? But for me, there should be a lot more women supporting women. And growing up, and Helen will know this as well, you've got like, there's so many parents at the side of the park, you know, when you're under 16s or whatever, because they've got to take the players, you know, they've got to be the taxi drivers and everything. Then when it gets to a certain age, like they just fall away, and it ends up like a photographer and 2 men and their dog, and you know, and that's the thing for me. I feel that there's got to be a lot more women, and it can be, you know, accessibility. Can we have games on different days so that more people will watch different things? And I know that, you know, that SWPL SWF, I've looked into so many different things, and they've done amazing with the progression. But for me, like, there needs to be more support. Like there needs to be more women, whether it's ex-players, whether it's, you know, young players supporting kind of Celtic, Rangers, Glasgow City, Partick Thistle, whoever it is. Like I just feel that there needs to be a kind of push to get more women watching women, and you know, bringing their daughters along, bringing their sons along as well. It's a fantastic environment. Sometimes you might not want your kids going along to such an intense atmosphere like your Ibroxes or your Celtic Park, so to kind of bed them in, go along to a women's game. You know, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's a fantastic level. You know, they started singing songs for the players. It's a great occasion, and some of the games that I've went to as well and took my kids along to, like, they just absolutely loved it. And for me, that's the thing. Like, we just need to try and get more people in, because as soon as you get more people watching, then obviously it generates more revenue. Kind of, you know, that just that build up. I suppose we could keep progressing, hopefully, over the next few years.
Helen, what's your kind of your thoughts about the next couple of years for you? Like before we kind of wrap up, like what's your, if I was to say to you in 2 years' time, what do you want to still be in the game? Do you want to kind of move into kind of talk about football in a kind of different environment? What's your kind of thoughts about the future in the game?
Do you know, if I had a pound for every time somebody asked me if I wanted to go into coaching, I could retire. I take it as a bit of an insult, to be honest, but I'm sure it's not meant like that. But you know, as you start to get a bit older, folk are like, oh, so would you ever think about coming back to the club as a coaching role, or would you like to take on a bit of coaching? And I think it's a difficult one for me, because obviously I love the game, but I'm a teacher as well, so teaching 9 to 5 or whatever, and then going straight out of that and into an extracurricular club, and then going from that into coaching in the evening. I'm not sure that that's entirely where I want to go, but I can't imagine not having football in some capacity. So I'm going to have to figure out where I want to go next with it. But I mean, I've still, when I left Stenhousemuir, I spoke to the chairman in there, and he said to me about returning, next season in a coaching role. But I still got a few seasons left to play, I think. And, you know, like I said, you know, I didn't leave Stenhousemuir because I wasn't enjoying it. I left Stenhousemuir because I knew that there was still life in the legs. And although Suzanne will tell you, the Susie was meant to be on tonight, that I don't run. If you get her to show you the stats on the wee trackers, then you'll see that my stats, even though I'm one of the oldest in the team, is still up there, while competing against all the young ones. And it's true when you watch them all running past, like walking past you. I'm like, mate, I've got like 15 years on you. Come on, you should be back in there. So I think it's still, as long as I've got the legs, I still want to play. And I've had this toil before, dropping leagues. It's a bit of a kick to your ego, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think the love of playing is more important to me at the moment than coaching or watching it from the sidelines. So if you have to drop to play, then that's what I'll do. But at the moment, I still would like to set my bar at a few seasons left in this league at the moment. And if promotion came, I guess I'd have to see what's what. We actually played a couple of friendlies against teams in the league above, and I really enjoyed them. But with another couple of seasons under my belt, I'm not sure if I'll be able to keep up. But I would certainly try until somebody told me to leave, which may come one day.
Yeah, I think you've still got many years left, Helen. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much for joining us again. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I have. Thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And Suzanne, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks again.
Thank you. This will be the last women's show before Christmas, so have a good Christmas, everybody, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you.